Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another Menopause Strategy Sessions where I talk to experts in the field that help us navigate the menopause transition. And today we are joined by a healthcare consultant and an author, Miss Victoria Mondloch, and we are going to talk about advocacy, tracking your symptoms, and why that's important during this menopause journey. So welcome, Victoria. Thank you for joining me today.
Well, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm honored to be here.
I really wanted to have you on because I think the trajectory of your career is very important. And so I wanted to just touch on that a little bit first. You were actually a practicing physician before you turned into a healthcare consultant. So you have been on both sides of the fence. You've also gone through your own menopause journey, as many of us have, and you understand both from the doctor's perspective and the patient's perspective. So I think you are a very important person to sit here and talk about advocacy, as well as us tracking our symptoms on the patient side. So why do you think that's important?
Well, advocacy allows us to actually share what we are feeling and experiencing in our body. Only we know that. Now, we sometimes are told by our healthcare providers, no, that's not what you feel. This is what you feel. And you're actually corrected, but they are not inside your body. You are. And I'll give you the perfect example of how that can happen is not just once, but twice. Once in medical school, once as a practicing MD, I tried to tell my doctors what I was experiencing. And the result of them not listening to me was that I died on the table twice. Not just once, but twice. Because they wouldn't listen to what I was telling them as a medical professional was happening inside my body. They knew better, or so they thought. And in both instances, the doc never came back to talk to me the first time. The second time, not until 5 days post-op had passed. And then he tried to still pin it on me that it was my fault of what happened. So It is extremely important that you understand that only you know what's going on in your body. So being able to navigate your symptoms is one of the most important things that we can help you with. That's what I always wanted to help my patients with. They would come in and say, I don't feel good. And I would help them translate that into a list of symptoms that really was how they don't feel good. Well, let's talk about that. And if you can put into more definable symptoms what that means to you, then you're having a better base of knowledge to not only share with your healthcare provider, but to take and mark and then hand to them, because now it becomes a part of your electronic chart.
Yeah, that's so true, because one of the things that I say is instead of going in and saying, Doc, I feel like crap, you can say, I feel like crap, and this is how it shows up for me. And what's even better is you come with what I call the receipts and you share those. And that actually makes the appointment more efficient because you're not spending those precious appointment minutes going through and having the doctor having to ask you, well, what does crap feel like? You've brought it. Whether it's in writing, it's, on your phone or however, you come prepared so that the diagnosis and the treatment starts earlier than later.
Right. And, having a comprehensive set of symptoms is really important because most people don't realize that when you start having hormone imbalance in perimenopause, menopause, that imbalance doesn't just affect hot flashes and night sweats. Mm-hmm. That's your vascular system. It affects hair growth. It affects skin. It affects how your eyes work. It affects taste. It affects muscular integrity. It affects joints and whether you have joint pain. It affects how your GI tract works. In other words, every system from head to toe is impacted. But if you have rheumatoid arthritis or another diagnosis, it's going to impact that person more intensely and differently than somebody who doesn't, but they're still going to have joint symptoms. So it's important to realize that change of hormone and hormone imbalance affects everything from head to toe. So you feeling fatigued is a symptom. Wow. You having increased acid reflux is a symptom. Wow. Heart palpitations. You didn't have them before and now you do. That's a symptom. Wow. All of a sudden, it's everything you're noticing is fair game as long as you're honest about what's happening and where you think it may have come from. But I don't want you just guessing at it. The more important thing is present it to your healthcare provider and then ask for the science, ask for blood levels. Wow, we do blood levels for everything else. Why can't we do them for hormone levels? What an amazing thought.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that's really important is in your mind, when things change and those symptoms crop up, and I call them those communication signals, your body is talking to you in many ways. Sometimes it's screaming at you, it feels like. You have to consider all of them. So even if you're going to see your OBGYN and you're having heart palpitations, don't think just because you're at your OBGYN, you can't tell him or her, I'm having heart palpitations, because they're all connected, right? And so
absolutely,
the story, all of it, all of the little aches and pains and twinges that you feel is very important, because then they can help put the story together, form the patterns, and begin to see what's happening with you.
Right. And we've got a resource for patients, and it's a checklist of symptoms. And those symptoms are actually subdivided into the symptoms that regulate and show that your estradiol may be more low, or whether your progesterone is too low, or whether you have too much testosterone on board, because those are all variations of the theme of what can happen with hormone imbalance. It's not just estradiol. Estradiol and progesterone are both female hormones, and they don't even act together sometimes. Mm-hmm. And your male hormones, your total and free testosterone, they have to balance with your female, because who wants to be a guy? Oh, when you're a female. In other words, think about balance. And if you think balance, out of balance is going to give you symptoms.
Right. And it's not just what we call our sex hormones. It's also our insulin. It's also our cortisol, our thyroid hormones. All of them are in our body. And sometimes they're not all playing nicely together. And that's why it's important for every single symptom to be recorded.
Exactly. In other words, the foundation of your optimal health is balancing those very four hormone groups you just mentioned. Female, male, number one, thyroid, number two, your stress hormone, your cortisol, number three, and insulin, not just your blood sugar, as number four. And you're right, they all have to play nicely and balance with each other in the same sandbox, or you really are not going to feel good.
Right. So from your experience, can you help us understand where we would find some of these symptoms across the four buckets? So when we're writing it down and we're thinking, my eye is twitching, what could that be in response to or for?
Actually, it could be to all four. And it's important to understand that concept, because if you have excess stress going on, you could develop an eye twitch. Mm-hmm. Many people may develop, even they'll call it a tic, or they may even get a paralysis of a nerve, like a Bell's palsy from stress. So excess cortisol can be really troublesome and difficult to sort out. Yet it can also represent thyroid. It can also represent female-male imbalance. So these symptoms are not just, oh, it only goes in one bucket. It goes to the foundation, those 4 foundational hormones, and it can apply to any of them.
So when you used to practice medicine and you had your clients or your patients come into you, what would be the steps that you would take with them once they had all of their symptoms or what they thought were symptoms recorded?
Well, and again, having the symptoms recorded was the first step. So I'll briefly show that there is a symptoms worksheet, which we have as a resource for you at the end of and associated with this podcast. But I would have patients go through those symptoms with me, and then I'd have them tell me their top 3. And it was very telling, their top 3. It didn't mean we weren't going to focus on more than that, but we needed to start where they were hurting most, the top 3. And I would say to them, if I can impact your top 3 symptoms in the next 6 months, would that be okay with you? And they didn't even know how to respond to that because I acknowledged their symptoms. Then I validated their symptoms, and then I gave them a plan. We had a solution. We were going to check levels and then see if we were going to impact their symptoms.
And can I guess what maybe one of the top 3 is?
Well, in particular, the almost ubiquitous symptom that was marked was excess abdominal weight gain and across the board. And women would check it so hard, they would tear the paper, and it was marked 1, 2, or 3, usually number 1, because it's an imbalance of that female male, which is now impacting thyroid, which can also be impacted by your cortisol, which definitely impacts, therefore, your insulin. Therefore, all 4 hormone groups are out of balance. So how can your body possibly know what weight it's supposed to be? It doesn't even get a clear signal. It's like trying to tune a radio and all you get is static.
Yeah, well, I was going to say sleep, but I think what you mentioned, weight gain, is also one of the ones that I've heard about a lot too. But I think sleep has been what I hear, I think, from almost every single woman that I talk to, either that they're not being able to fall asleep, or when they do fall asleep, they can't stay asleep throughout the night. That's what I've been hearing. What do you think about that one?
Absolutely. And sometimes it is from hot flashes. Sometimes it's from muscular aches that you can't get comfortable. Sometimes it's that your stress level is so high you can fall asleep, but you wake up in a start after, maybe sometimes as little as 30 to 45 minutes, and your adrenaline is just running. And you cannot get back into a peaceful kind of state of mind because your body is running 1,000 miles an hour. And that's not your fault. That's an imbalance chemically in your body that just simply needs to be recognized and then addressed. You can say, well, I got too much adrenaline, but what do you do about it? How do you manage your cortisol? And people really don't even realize that it's vitamin that they can take that can help. And so a methylated vitamin B12, wow, can have such a tremendous impact on your cortisol levels. And women have no clue that that's something, it's over the counter. It's something they can easily get without a prescription. It's available at every drugstore, or if they prefer it online, they can get it online.
So explain to us what methylated means. That was a very big word there.
Well, methylation is a detox method in your body. So we all go through, every cell does hundreds, if not thousands, of chemical reactions in our cells, which we have multiple of in our body every single day. And if we don't have the ability to clear the junk after the chemical reaction is done, it's like cleaning your plate after you eat. You got to scrape off the crumbs and you got to clean your plate. You don't just reuse the plate every time and let everything build up on the plate. So if you can't methylate or clean your cell over time, over years, your cell builds up all of that leftover junk. And now you have a cell that's big and bloated and filled with junk. It's like walking around a cell like a house of hoarders. You've only got little pathways that anything can function and get through in your cell until you gunk it up so much that the cell no longer works. Well, methylation is a way to actually start to clear that house of hoarders, that cell that's got all that junk in there. And if you can methylate your vitamin B12, you're going to clear it, clear it, clear it, clear it. And all of a sudden, you've got better functioning cells. And it's one of the theories, actually, of fibromyalgia is that it really isn't a muscular issue as much as it's a cellular issue of junk building up in your cells that you're not clearing. 20 to 30% of the population genetically has the inability to completely clear or methylate and detox the cells in their own body. 20 to 30%. And the solution? Take methylated vitamin B12. Boom.
Wow, that's a good way to describe that. I had never thought about the metaphor of like a hoarder's house with your junked up or your gunked up cells. That makes perfect sense. So let's talk about what happens next. So she has tracked her symptoms. She's come in, she's told you her top three. Maybe for you, she's telling you about the weight that just will not budge from her middle. So then what is the next phase of this? Now we're probably down to the last 5 minutes of the appointment in most cases. What comes next?
Well, I always tell patients, I'm not going to guess. I want to individualize your treatment to you. So let's be scientific about it. I need your blood work. I need your thyroid levels. I need your cortisol. I need your female male hormones. I need your insulin. And let's get that blood work because we have to start with science. And I need to make it specific to you because what may work for you may not work for the next patient or for the second patient after her. It's got to be individualized and work for you.
And so what happens when the labs come back? And I know you've heard this before. And they are normal, but she's saying to you, but I still feel like crap.
My claim to fame, besides being scientific, was that I would ask a patient, do you want to be normal or do you want to be optimal? In other words, do you want to be in normal health or in optimal health? And they would sit back and go, optimal health. I'd say, okay. Then here's the approach I'm going to use. I'm not going to use the reference range, which is designed for 12-year-olds to 90-year-olds. I'm going to use the optimal range. Would that be okay with you? Because I'd like you in optimal health. And they wouldn't even bat an eyelash. Well, of course, I want optimal range to be used. Okay, now that we've established that groundwork, we're also going to judge what your hormone levels, female and male, come back as to whether they're age appropriate for you. In other words, if you're 50, you don't want the levels of a 25-year-old. You may think you do, but you really don't, okay? Because that doesn't balance with the rest of your body. So it needs to be age appropriate for where you are. And that's important because now we're talking about possible prevention of Alzheimer's. What? We're talking about prevention of cardiovascular disease. What? We're talking about even prevention of cancer. Whoa, that's a game changer right there. So now you've given them the individual reason, the personalized approach, and why that's important going forward for their longevity.
So in terms of the optimal numbers, so if you have a patient that's going in to see their doctor and they're taking the normal labs that's covered under our insurance, at least here in the United States, and they come back normal, how do you go back and ask for labs that show numbers that are optimal?
It's the same numbers. It's simply a narrower range.
Okay.
And the range that I used is actually a range that was published by a doctor, a neurologist who specializes in Alzheimer's and neurodegenerative disease. And interestingly, this is a really smart neurologist because he also talks about balancing the four basic hormone groups. So he listed in his book of labs you should draw, he listed not the reference range, but the optimal ranges. So the addition that my research has added to it is where are the age appropriate female and male hormone levels that women need to be at and why. So the book I'm referencing is actually The End of Alzheimer's, which is a groundbreaking book about not only what blood work you should do, why you should do it, but then what is a treatment protocol that you can follow. And it's, again, the optimal levels he discusses are the optimal levels that I used, and that comes out of UCLA.
Awesome. So if I am in my mid 40s and I come to see you, I should not be measured against the labs of the rest of the population that's been averaged. I should be measured for optimal levels based on women like myself in the same age range. Is that about?
Absolutely. That is exactly right. And if docs haven't heard that concept before, which they may not have, this is not something that is taught in medical schools, believe it or not. Mm-hmm. Yes, UCLA, but this specific doctor, this is what his work showed with his research. And what my work showed with my research was the female male hormone age appropriate levels. So it's research that still could continue and be further validated, but it is still in written form that as a patient, bringing this book, bringing my book, Full Bloom, to your doctor's appointment, which has in it the list of your symptoms that you can mark down. In other words, we're not only giving you the information, we'd like to give you the resources to use to make this seamless for you so that you have the best appointment, getting the most information across to your healthcare provider as you can.
That makes perfect sense. And I want to go back to, I guess this would be the end of the process here. So we have determined what's wrong with us because our symptoms have been talking to us. We've gotten our optimal labs. Now we're trying to feel better. So when you talked about the methylation process, that's like getting rid of all the gunk, right? And baselining and getting your cells clean, I guess. When you think about how we should start working towards feeling better, is there a sequence of events? Like, do you start with the cellular level before you add more hormones? Is there a certain process that you would consider so that everything starts to click into place?
Well, realizing that blood work is going to take time to come back, the easiest things people can do are things like, what is your sleep pattern? What is your dietary pattern? What is your exercise level? Oh, you don't exercise. Okay, your job is 16 hours a day. I get it. Well, maybe while you're sitting, you can still do something that has, either ankle exercises or whatever. In other words, that can be individualized to the needs and situations of each individual patient. It's also a question of quality of food, quality of exercise. Are you eating your meals out at fast food every lunch? Or do you bring leftovers from dinner before and heat it in the microwave at work, or you don't have that option. Do you make a sandwich? Do you go for a healthy sandwich if you have options? Do you stop at a grocery store and have somebody, that's a pre-made deli sandwich? In other words, there are options that people can choose to have less chemicals in their body or more chemicals in their body. So quality of food, quality of how you sleep, quality of how you exercise. It's not about how many minutes a week, but are you weight bearing? And are you doing the type of exercise that's actually going to be part of your whole mind, body, spirit? Do you set aside time to calm down before you go to bed at night? Let that cortisol drop. There are many things that are lifestyle induced that people can do before we get their lab results back.
Right. So that's also part of the process, right? So
absolutely.
You just can't sit by the wayside and think, okay, I'm going to tell the doctor what's wrong and then wait for a medication to solve my problem. There are things that you should be doing with your lifestyle, period, to help yourself feel better.
Right, because you've already taken charge of telling your doc your symptoms. So take charge of part of your solution. You know in your heart that your sleep cycle is going to be important. So how do you get rid of the clutter in your bedroom? How do you decrease the noise level? How do you leave the TV on? Do you need the TV on in order to fall asleep? Some people claim they do, and many times they find they can work that out of their routine. Many people just need to be honest and take a good look at what their daily routines are in order to find out where little glitches, little, incremental changes can make big changes in how they feel. They all add up.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to recap what we talked about. I feel like there's probably 4 takeaways, and let me see if you want to add anything to that. Number 1, your symptoms are your body's communicator. So track those and take those to your doctor. Number 2, when you are considering labs, you want optimal, not normal, and you want optimal based on the age that you are. Number 3, lifestyle changes are very important, and we need to take control of basically our own destiny and how we live our lives every day. And number 4, everything is individualized care. There are no cookie cutter solutions because every woman has different symptoms and the solutions for her are very different. And we must remember that in the process.
And honor that, right? It is not something that you should apologize for, that this is a solution tailored for you. This is who you are. So wear it proudly. And if it's not working well for you, then let's fix it and let's get it working the best for you, because most women are actually caretaking their family. They're caretaking their elderly parents, or maybe their in-laws. They're caretaking the next door neighbor's animals when they're away. They're caretaking part of their church community. They're caretaking so much more than they think they are, but they don't caretake themselves. They leave themselves out of the picture. Well, you can't be your best unless you take care of yourself as a part of that community. You deserve that and honor that.
And I think that that is the perfect ending, the reminder that we must do that. And I want to thank you so much for joining me today and walking through that process and giving us the permission, really, to literally take care of ourselves in the way that we show up, not only for others, but for ourselves and through our advocacy, starting with tracking our symptoms. I think that is vitally important. And I do want to point out that you do have 2 books, Full Bloom and Blossoming, and I will have the links to those under this video in case anybody wants to check them out. Thank you for the work that you continue to do in the healthcare space, even though you have retired. Being a healthcare consultant is, adding more of that positivity. So we do obviously appreciate that. So thank you for your time today, Victoria. It's been
Well, and thank you again for the opportunity. I always love empowering women to be their best. And what a wonderful forum to be able to do it with.
thank you so much.